and jump into it first. And Esau said, this is the memory verse, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and now look, he has taken away my blessing. And he said, have you not reserved the blessing for me? So now let me put on my spectacles so I can read, because I found this online. The birthright was a natural privilege to the firstborn son. So when you got the birthright, what did you get? No. That's the blessing. The birthright. That's why I asked this question. I want to see if you guys... No, not all the wealth. Go ahead, Adriel.
The leadership of the spiritual role for the family.
Okay, you got the spiritual role of the family, but you also got a double portion. Huh? Yes, and in the inheritance, you got a double portion of it. So if there were 6 children, and 4 were boys, and 2 were girls, the boys got the inheritance. The girls get a dowry. This is old. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. People got to go back and look at history here. Okay, they got a dowry from the father, but they didn't get an inheritance. Okay, and so if it was split up in 4, it was really split up in 5 because I got a double portion. If I was on the firstborn, in this case would be my older brother, older brother Carl. So anyway, he would got the double portion. All right, anyway. So in receiving the birthright, the firstborn would become the head of the family and would have charge of the family, including the family property, which is what Adriel said, okay? He would be responsible for the welfare of the younger sons, the widow, and any unmarried daughters. Okay, that's what I'm saying. This is where the dowry and everything comes in. He would exercise considerable authority over the other members of the family. The blessing that he received would also place him in special covenant relationship with the Lord. During the patriarchal period when Esau and Jacob lived, God dealt directly with the heads of the families. The Hebrews counted on the blessing given by the father to be very important and considered it an oral contract, which is just as binding as a written contract. So back then, if I said I was going to do something, and remember what Boaz did? He took his sandal, his right sandal, and they passed it on, and that was his oral contract signage. Okay? Go back and look at Ruth, the story of Ruth. Okay? Now, in the case of Jacob, it appears that he did not actually inherit any property from his father, even though he did buy the birthright from Esau with a bowl of pottage, a kind of bean stew. What Jacob did receive from Isaac was the blessing plan for Esau. The blessing, a sort of last will and testament, promised that Jacob would have lordship over other nations. The blessing Jacob received promised him divine protection, so that whatsoever cursed Jacob would be cursed, and whoever blessed Jacob would receive the blessing of God. So that's what I wanted you guys to understand here as this lesson goes into it, is that there's a difference between the birthright and the blessing. Because when Israel dies, he does a blessing on all 12 of his sons. Okay? So this becomes important for you to understand later on. So I wanted you to separate the birthright from the blessing. Okay? Because the blessing is what is going to be foretold about who you are and what you're going to do and your progeny from you. Okay? All right. So now that I've totally confused you on the birthright and the blessing, let's go on. God clearly stated the promised seed would come from Isaac, because we knew that from Abraham's life. In fact, Abraham was still alive. If you calculate it, Abraham was still alive when Jacob and Esau were born. Jacob was 160. Think about it. Okay? if Isaac was 60, Abraham lived to 175, he was around for about 15 years. Okay? Now, the Bible and Mrs. White doesn't develop this, but think about it. It's simple math chronologically. Okay? So, Isaac had 2 sons. From which would the promise be fulfilled? Isaac had 2 sons. Which one of the sons the promise would be fulfilled? Jacob. Thanks, Raj. Okay. Esau was profane. You read in Hebrews, somebody turn to Hebrews 12:16, please. This is Sabbath school. We all should have our swords of the Spirit. Okay.
Hebrews 12:16 says, make sure that no one is immoral or godless like Esau, who traded his birthright at the firstborn son for a single meal.
Right. So, as you see, appetite came into play again. Okay? Appetite. Jacob did not use the right methods. And the end does not always justify the mean, and Jacob paid the consequences later in his life. So, Jacob steals the blessing. God blesses Jacob. Jacob is tricked. God blesses Jacob too, and then Jacob is a blessing. That's our lesson for this. But now I got some Sabbath questions I want you to ponder. Okay? All right. Rebecca is told by God about the future of her unborn children. She, in her own power, decides to move that forward. So you have to read between the lines, and also read the text that the lesson gives you in regards to patriarchs and prophets. Rebecca was the motivating factor for what Jacob did. Okay? Even though Jacob did it, the mother was the instigator. Okay? Now, if you also have read your Bible, you would see the whole book of Obadiah talks about Esau and Edom. So just turn real quick to Obadiah. That's kind of hard to do. Obadiah is one of the minor prophets. Okay? It's only 1 chapter. It's like Jude. Okay? Yes, go to the front of your Bible. Look at what page you got to turn to. Joel, Amos, Obadiah, if I remember right. Okay, so now I'm not asking anybody to read it, but you will see the whole chapter talks about Edom and Esau. Like, look at verse 2, if I remember right. Okay, and then he goes more into it. That's Obadiah. Now, somebody turn to Romans 9:13 for me. I'm not going to have you read Obadiah. I just want you to read Obadiah later. Okay? Romans 9:13, right. And then somebody else find Malachi 1, 2, and 3. No, she got it. She got it back there.
Work on the next one, Lona.
Yeah.
Romans 9, verse 13, and
Yes.
it says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated.
Yes. Okay.
Coming to you.
He despised. He was hated. Okay, who's got Malachi 1?
No, I don't have.
Oh.
Malachi 1,
Chapter 1, verses 2 and 3.
I have loved you, saith the Lord, yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord, yet I have loved Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
And I've hated Esau, laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness.
Okay. So as you can see, he loved Jacob and he hated Esau. God despised Esau. Okay? So, like I said, Esau is talked about in multiple times in the Bible. Okay? So now, here's the things I want you to see. Rebekah never sees Jacob again. Okay? Okay? Jacob realizes God is with him at Bethel. Okay? Jacob is deceived by his father-in-law. Okay? God blesses Jacob in many ways, and then Jacob is a blessing to the world. So let's go into the lesson again. Why is Esau, so now, from that, why is Esau mentioned by God so much? I've given you 4 specific instances in the Bible where God talks about Esau or Edom, because Edomites are Esau. Remember, about 3 weeks ago, I mentioned, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I mentioned the fact that they harass the Israelites for the rest of their country's life. Remember, at 70 AD, they're destroyed. Okay? So why is Esau mentioned by God so much? Remember I talked about appetite? Okay, go ahead, Tom. You can't use appetite now.
It seems that he had everything that he wanted to have, but because of a hunger and a weakness, he gave everything up, and that's not good.
Right. Through hunger, he gave up everything. Okay? And then, when he realized he gave up everything, he gets upset about it. Right. And the other one I want to ask you about is, what other facts can we learn about these 2 brothers? Don't answer that. This is a question to ponder. Okay? So this is what I want you to think about as we go through the lesson. Think about that one. What other lessons we learn here, okay? So let's go into Sunday. Jacob steals the blessing, okay? So even though it gives you that verse, which talks about the birthright, a lot of times when we're studying the life of Esau and Jacob, and the reason why I say Esau first, because he came out first, we mix up the blessing and the birthright. That's why I read that in the beginning for your mental edification. Okay? So, they were born the same day, but they had different characters. As you can see, Esau was the active hunter, and Jacob was a calm shepherd. Okay? That's the Roy, I think it was, what's his name? Roy, the guy who does a lot of the Adventist paintings. Yes, Tom.
I have a question. You have a question. Okay. Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. Now, Jacob did a bad thing, too. And God turned that into hate. No. I mean, a blessing. Yes. He did something that was illegal technically, but yet God loved him for it. Explain, please.
Ha ha ha. Okay. That's going to be a tricky one. All right. So the first thing that comes to mind is that God has a plan for all of us. And even though we may not implement the plan that he wants in the way he wants, he's still going to implement his plan. Okay? Rebekah was told that the younger would be the boss of the older. Okay? That the older would serve the younger. I just turned it around to see if you guys would catch it. Okay? So, because of that, Rebekah put things into motion, but when you read Patriarchs and Prophets, you see from what she writes that Jacob didn't want to do it. He didn't want to deceive his father. Okay? So the issue is that Jacob had purity in his heart, but he listened to his mother because you are trained to listen to your parents. Okay? Okay, you got more.
Now, to me, as you read on in the lesson, turnabout is fair play. What happened to him when he went after
I'll develop that. Don't jump ahead of me on that one. I'll develop that one. Okay, I got that. I think I got that covered. So, yes, because I had to think about that one too. All right, so Esau only cared for today, but Jacob went beyond it. Think about it. How many people you know who only care about today and forget about tomorrow? Because, hey, I may not be around, you know? Okay. All right. So Jacob longed for the birthright and its blessing because his mother, as you read more, his mother pounded it into him. You are going to have X. Okay? So he did something. Okay? You hungry? Okay, give me your birthright. Was it to me? I'm about to die. Think about that. Okay? And in the end, when Isaac is old and blind, he steals the blessing. Okay? So now, let's develop some questions from that part. Okay? It was interesting that the mother and the father had a favorite. Did you catch that in the lesson? That's what I want you guys to see. The mother and the father had their favorites. Okay? And the issue is that can cause strife. Okay? Do you think split love helped this issue?
Yes.
It helped the issue?
Well, no, but you said, when the parents have favoritism, like they love one another. Because I grew up in a big family with.
Were you the favorite?
No, my
Little brothers were the favorite?
there's my brother can.
Okay, so we know that Ray was the favorite, yes. You're not the favorite? Okay. All right. Esau only cared for his appetite, and Jacob used that to his advantage. Okay? That's, when they're saying is that when you see something, you take it. Okay. Do you think Jacob planned this trickery in advance? He was an opportunist. Okay? See, that's when I thought about this question, I was like, okay, we know that Rebekah put him up to it. We know that he said, no, I don't want to deceive my father. But it came to a point where I think that as Joellen said, he saw an opportunity and he took it. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't think he planned it in advance, but he saw the opportunity of what his mother was saying to him and he took it. Okay? And then when you look, when Isaac wanted to bless Esau, Rebekah tricked Isaac with Jacob. Okay? She put fur on his arms, fur around his neck, and he says, "You smell like Esau, but you sound like Jacob." Okay? All right. So that's, you think about that one too, They didn't have deodorant back then, so each child smelled his own way, Right. Well, no, you got to think about these things, back then you were known by your scent. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Yeah, you try to put 2022 variables on a, 1500 BC. Doesn't work that way. It's true in the animal kingdom, right? Right. If you actually see a pack of animals, they go up to each other and they sniff each other. Okay? So when Isaac wanted to bless Esau, Rebekah tricked with Jacob. What qualities of Jacob predispositioned him to be more worthy than Esau of Isaac's blessings? Now think about this one. What predispositioned Jacob to get the blessing? Okay, Joellen, all right.
Because Esau gave up his birthright so easily. He didn't deserve to have it for trading it for a meal.
Okay, but what did one do growing up that the other one didn't do? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, one was a hunter.
Go ahead.
One was a hunter and one worked in the field.
Worked with
But
the
a
sheep.
little bit more.
So the mother cared for the one that worked in the field.
A little bit more. You're on the right track.
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
Is it because he was a shepherd?
If in Patriarchs and Prophets, it specifically says that Jacob was more obedient. Okay? Because it's developed further on when Esau takes 2 wives of the children of Heth. Okay? And it says in the 160 somewhere that really saddened Isaac and Rebekah because he took children of the Canaanite women. He took wives of the Canaanite women. And he didn't listen. Where Jacob didn't do that. And she says that Isaac had admonished Jacob and Esau, don't take wives of these heathens, these heathen nations. And it actually turned Esau away from God. Okay? Which is what happened to Solomon in the long run. Okay? So is this the way that God wanted Jacob to receive the birthright? No. Okay? So here we go. Page 178. Jacob had learned from his mother the divine intimation that the birthright should fall to him, and he was filled with an unspeakable desire for the privileges that it would confer. Birthright. It was not the possession of his father's wealth he craved, but the spiritual birthright was the object of his longing. To commune with God as did Abraham, to offer the sacrifice of atonement for his family, and to be the progenitor of the chosen people and the promised Messiah, and to inherit the immortal possessions, embrace and the blessings of the covenant. Here were the privileges and honors that kindled his most ardent desires. Now, that's a long sentence. Okay, but think about it. He looked at it spiritually. Okay? That's what she writes. He looked at all of that spiritually. Okay? But he also looked at how I can do it because his mother put him up to it. So a lot of people always want to say, oh, Jacob was this, that, and the other, but mama had something to do with that. Okay? Huh?
It says that she had something to do with the second time that he stole the blessing.
Yeah,
But
both
it
times.
doesn't say that she had anything to do with when he stole the birthright. Other than telling him all of this, but that was...
Yeah, but I'm just, well, yes and no. Yes, okay. I can dig it out later on, but let's go on, since it's already 26 after. Now, Jacob runs because he has heard that his brother wants to kill him, right? We saw that. I'm going to kill him. When dad dies, he's a dead man. Okay? So, Rebekah says to Isaac, send him to my brother. So he takes off. And he gets a day's journey away. He gets weary, lays down on a rock, and God gives him the dream of the angels going up and down a ladder. Okay? And that's where you get the song, We Are. Thank you, Joellen. Okay. And the Lord is above it. Okay? So, God blessed Jacob in his journey. He introduced him to the top of the large ladder. It reached to heaven. Jacob tried to get the blessing for himself, but only God can give it by grace. Okay? So, yes, the blessing is the important part of the story here. What Isaac said will happen. And then that's why Esau says, don't you have a blessing for me? Okay? Jacob reacted to God's blessing by promising 2 things: to make that place God's house, Bethel, and to give back a tithe of everything to God. So here's the second time we read about tithing, and we're still in Genesis. Okay? Abraham gave it to Melchizedek, and here's Jacob promising it a tithe. All right. So let's develop some questions about this. Bethel. Can you remember what happened in Bethel? And so I give you a couple verses there. Genesis 12:8. Who's got Genesis 12:8? And the other one is Genesis 13:3-4. Okay, you got 12:8? Okay, I got her.
It's gonna be King James Version, 12, you said
13.
Genesis
3 and
12,
4.
what? 8, okay, and he said, and he removed from thence unto a mountain on the coast of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west, and Hagon on the east, and there he builded an altar unto the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord.
Okay, all right. Now 13:3-4, 3 and 4.
And he went on his journey from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called the name of the Lord.
Okay. All right, notice his name is still Abram. All right, moving on. So Jacob went to Rebekah's brother Laban. The Laban, Eliezer, met before Rebekah came back. Okay? It's the same Laban. Okay? Now, why did Rebekah think of her brother Esau, of her brother when Esau wanted to kill Jacob? It is something that she says in the Bible. Okay? So go look in those chapters, chapter 28, 29, 30, something there. It's in the lesson.
He's looking for a wife for the son, for her son.
No, this is not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay? There's something that Rebekah says to Isaac. I know Daryl makes me think about this. What? What'd you say, dear? He didn't tell you the answers? No. No, she watches me build it, but she's usually doing something else. Okay? Well, part of it was the fact that Laban's far, far away. That's part of it. Okay? Well, I'm not going to, I want you guys to search that, because this isn't part of the lesson. It was in part of, no, it's not deceive or deceived. It's on this page. Okay?
A mistake with marrying?
Okay, I'll read it to you. Rebekah is worried that and wants to prevent this crime that would be fatal for both sons. Genesis 27:45. Okay? It's right there in the lesson. Genesis 27:45. Who's got Genesis 27:45? Okay. Okay?
Genesis 27:45, the King James Version. Until thy brother's anger turn away from thee, and he forget that which thou hast done to him, then I will send and fetch thee from thence.
Mm-hmm. So she thought,
why should I be deprived also of your brother, of both of in one day?
Yes, because think about it. Think about what happened to Cain and Abel. That story was still passed down. So now you have Esau killing Jacob. The promise is to Jacob. It messes up the whole dynamic. So Rebekah is now saying, well, I can't let that happen because God's plans will not happen. But also the fact that now you got the hatred in the family. And also, the last thing is that she specifically says, after Esau's hatred has abated, I'll come and get you. Well, that never happened. Okay? All right, let's go on. Let's go on. Oh, there it is. So God blessed Jacob in his journey. Why would God bless Jacob after Jacob's actions? Okay? God does this with David. Okay? Also, God does this with Paul when he was Saul and became Paul. Okay? Yes, Tom.
Repentance. They both repented. David said he repented, and God said he's a man after my own heart.
So in this case, Jacob recognized God's presence, and he realized that God was still with him. So therefore, Jacob knew his trip would not be in vain. And we read this. What is the difference between the birthright and the final blessing? Okay? The birthright had to do with worldly possessions. The blessing had to do with the spiritual endpoint. I'll say it that way. Okay? So, she writes in page 183. I'll just let you read it. You got it? Okay. Moving on. Now we go into Jacob is tricked. So now you have to feel for Leah. And I'll develop that in a little bit. Okay? What have you done to me? I served for Rachel. You have deceived me. And the interesting thing in the lesson, the word for deceived is the same word that Esau uses when he got deceived. It's the same word. Okay? So let's build this. So, a stone marked the moment Jacob left his land, and another stone marked the moment he arrived in his destination. Think about that. And who is Jesus? The chief cornerstone. Okay? So, he left. There was a stone, poured the oil over it. He arrives in, well, they say Mesopotamia, but it was really, well, they call it Haran, but they named after Abraham's father. Okay? So, he arrives at this destination, and there's a stone over the well. Okay? Now, Jacob loved Rachel. Okay? So, instead of the dowry for his daughter, which is kind of interesting, normally the father gives the daughter away for a dowry, but in this case, he wanted to marry this woman. So he says, I will be your personal slave for 7 years. And the subtle thing that people should look at is Laban sold his daughter. Okay? So you think about it. There was a negotiated price. Do you look at that? I mean, do you think about that? Okay, women were property. Thank you. I didn't want to use that word, but Amy put it out there for me. All righty. Women were property. All right. So now there's a veil over her face, and he gives Leah, said, here's my daughter. So I'm wondering, were they the same height? You know what I'm saying? You're going, did they have the same body shape? You know what I mean? Well, the veil hit the face. But I'm just saying. Okay. He may have been drunk with love. Or other things too, right? Okay. There was a party. All right. So Jacob works for his father for 7 years, and it says that it was just a few days. Okay? I don't know if about 2,400 days is just a few days, but anyway.
Was it the same with women, the elder always getting the first right in most things when they want to get married? In other words, she was the older one.
The only thing, The only thing I could read from what there was is that, no, this is our custom that we give the older daughter away first. That's the only thing I could get from that, because there was really nothing that talked about a dowry or anything like that.
Shouldn't Jacob have understood that going in and not have to find out on the night of the wedding?
Good point. Yes. Right. All right, so now, here's... okay.
Right? Wasn't Jacob related to him, to his uncle?
Yeah.
Well, okay. If it was our way, shouldn't Jacob have known about those customs? Isn't that family?
No,
What do you think
because
there?
remember, his mother probably never talked about that, and they were far away. I mean, it was a long journey.
Well, I know it was a long journey, but didn't Jacob have a close relationship with his mom?
Yes.
Don't you think that may have come up in conversation between, all the years that they lived together? I mean,
well,
things like that. When I'm sitting with my parents, I'm asking them, hey, so how were things back in the day? What were my grandparents? What were my great-grandparents? What was the custom? Those are the kinds of conversations you have with your family typically, right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
7 years.
Don't know. Okay, go ahead.
Could it be he actually knew about that, but didn't want to bring the subject up because it would mess up his lust for Rachel?
Could be.
Well, Laban still should have mentioned it right at the beginning. Like, okay, well, we're negotiating for Rachel, but I can't let you have Rachel before I get rid of Leah.
I get rid of Leah. There you go. Well, I like that. All right. Okay. Hold on.
It didn't work out that way because God wanted him to see what it was like for Esau. What it was like getting tricking somebody else, and now you're getting tricked.
I developed that.
This is a lesson to learn.
Joellen, I developed that. Good point. All right, so let's go into it. Was God allowing Jacob to learn a lesson? Okay, I think so. Okay, it was a humbling experience.
Turnabout is fair.
Turnabout is fair play. All right, okay. All right, it says that in the lesson, this lex teleon thing. Yes. Jacob immediately fell in love with Rachel. Did his blind love allow Laban to trick him? As I said, Joel, and I'll develop this. Okay? Yeah, it's one of those things where you sit there as you're looking at the lesson, you guys are like, okay. One of the things I always said in my old church was, you got to take yourself out of this frame of reference and put yourself back where they were. And you have to think about what was going on, what were their customs, because we think about it in 2022 terms, something that happened way back when, and you can't look at it that way. You have to look at it from the point of view of what would be if I was back then. Okay? So yeah, this is what Adriel was saying, blind love. Okay. And the lesson author emphasizes this fact. Yes?
Talking about the reference, the frame of reference, let's think about his family for a second. What happened when, oh boy, let's go back all the way there. Abraham. What happened when Abraham was in Egypt?
Oh, he tricked, yes. He said,
Okay.
say you're my sister. Even though it wasn't a lie, because she was his half-sister.
But there's a bit of deceit there.
There's a deceit there.
So
right.
could this be a trait? And here we have Jacob with the whole influence of his mom. Earlier we were talking about that. There's a bit of deceit there. Could there be a lesson here that, and I'm not getting too far ahead into your lesson, am I? By bringing this out? Okay. Could there be a family trait here that keeps on being highlighted that needs to be addressed also?
Lenore says that there's a family dysfunctional activity there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. All right. So moving on. All right. So now here's one I thought about. Jacob runs to his father-in-law, his uncle and father-in-law. One of those, you ever seen those questions like, what is this person when he is the uncle and the father-in-law. You know what I'm saying? You ever thought about genealogy? But anyway, I thought about this as I was writing this question. If I was Leah, listening to my husband screaming to my father-in-law, what did you do to me? Okay? I understand still that women are possessions, but you still have to think about it as a Christian. How would you feel if you were Leah? Okay? That's why I wanted you guys to, yes?
Leah would feel worthless.
That's right. Leah felt worthless. Okay. That's why I said ladies. Only the ladies can answer this question, right? Yes. All right. Next, and how and why does God allow for, now I asked you about this up here. How and why does God allow for Laban's deception? That's right. There's 2 lessons here. Yes, I'm just going to cover 2, but there's several. One, how you talk about other people affects how those other people feel. 1, and then 2, how you deal with other people may come back and be dealt to you. You see what I'm saying? Okay. All right. All right. And so, yeah, Jacob learned a lot of lessons. Okay. All right. They said the law of Talion, which is basically the older cannot be. Yeah, that was in the lesson. Okay. Lex talionis. All right, let's go on into the next day. God blesses Jacob. Okay?
Excuse me. What we're saying here is we're seeing the result of the deception of Jacob and his father when he goes to get a wife that his father-in-law deceives him at first to get the end result that he was looking for. So I think the other deal, and it's the only other thing, is always check what you're buying first. She was veiled. He never took a look.
Are you saying
close
caveat
look.
emptor?
Just another lesson to be learned. That's all.
Buyer beware. There you go. Yes. Well, but Frank, he sold himself. Think about it, though. He sold himself for that. But in the transaction, he didn't get what he bargained for. Correct. Yes. So Law saw that Leah was not loved. He enabled her to conceive. And this is, how God works. Okay? So now, let's go through this. Jacob is blessed with 11 sons. So, you have the sisters, okay? And there's the mandrakes. We'll develop that in a little bit, okay? We'll develop those mandrakes in a second, okay? Because that's all part of the story. As they say, as Paul Harvey said, and that's the rest of the story. So let's go ahead. So she has 4 sons. I know there's 6, but she has 4 sons. Go through the story. She has 4 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Then she gives, wait. So Rachel then gives her maid, Rachel gives her maid, okay? So she can at least have a child in a surrogate sense. I was saying associate, but I kept saying, what's that word? A surrogate sense, okay? Now, then, okay, you have something to say, Joel?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because it's not the first time this has happened. We have children with your...
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah with Ishmael.
So why was it okay? Why did they think it was okay to do that?
That was part of their culture.
Justifiable.
Yeah. Again, like I said.
In God's eyes.
What I'm saying is that you have to look at it. You don't look at it in 2022 lenses. You got to look at it.
But still, in God's eyes.
Yeah.
You should be married to have children, not.
Well, and a maid is basically a servant. Okay, Adriel has something to say. Dun,
You got to take these lessons and stories in the Bible. You can't just say because it's in the Bible, it's what God accepts, okay? God clearly painted a picture of a man and a woman at creation, and that was the model, that was the perfect model. Here we're seeing, we're going to learn through the lessons here that this family was a dysfunctional family as its core, and deviating away from God's plan, okay, and what I mean is his model, deviating away from that perfect model that he created causes problems. Every time we deviate from God's model, it causes problems, okay? That they were able to work it out as a family. God blesses, God still, takes care of us. That is true. But again, anytime we deviate from that perfect plan, there's gonna be fallout from it. There's gonna be consequences from it. So we can't just say that, hey, this was okay with God. We cannot say that. The best we can say is God helped the situation out in this case.
Remember,
you follow what I'm saying?
Remember, Cain took 2 wives, Ada and Tilla, and if you remember, that was an aberration all the way back then. Okay? Okay, and it talks about it in the lesson. So, yes, Rachel had her, and then Zilpah. Then we had the issue of the mandrakes. Okay? So the mandrakes come in, and there's a negotiation. It's my night to be with Jacob, but if you give me these mandrakes, you can have them tonight. Okay?
Hey, that sounds familiar.
Yes. And that's what Tom just said too. And she gets pregnant again, and she has Issachar and then Zebulun. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. You got to look at the chronology about those mandrakes. Okay? So let's go on and talks about the questions here. All right. So Jacob also had a daughter. Can you tell me her name? Who said it? I heard it. Dinah. Okay. Talking to the microphone. Dinah. Dina. Yes. Okay. Dinah. Yes. Okay. Who was her mother? Leah. Thank you, Ray. Yes. I'm trying to see if you guys actually really read your lesson or you just zip through it. Okay. Leah had 2 important sons in Bible history future. What were their names? Nope. You know. Levi and Judah. And I did not put Raj up to that, okay? The Levites were whom? Before that. When the golden calf miraculously came out of the ground, they were the ones who, the whole tribe, when Moses said, who is on my God's side? The whole tribe of Judah. The whole tribe of Judah. And God said, you will be my priests. I'm sorry, the whole tribe of Levi. My fault, sorry. The whole tribe of Levi came over. Okay? And then the scepter will not depart from the tribe of Judah. That's what Israel said in his final blessing of Judah. Okay? So yes, the whole tribe of Levi, when the golden calf miraculously came out of the ground, as remember Aaron said? It just came out of the ground. Yes. All right. The Bible says, do not marry your wife's sister while she is alive. Why? You have to go into that? Go into the details, right. Okay. Look at Leviticus 18:18. Okay, this wasn't in the lesson either. It's just something that came to my mind. You know? Go ahead.
Going back to your question, that is the actual situation that actually happened, right?
Yes.
These was two sisters that were married with one man at the same time, and look at the family.
But
the
it
family
was put
drama.
upon him
I agree, it was put
by
upon him.
his father-in-law.
But then to answer the question here,
Yes.
why?
Okay.
To avoid a lot of drama.
Okay, looks like you got Leviticus 18:18. Go ahead.
Never shall thou take a wife to their sister, to vex her or to uncover her nakedness, besides this other in her lifetime.
Right. To vex her. What's vex mean? That's one of them. That was one of them island words. Okay? Huh?
Upset. Mad.
To upset her. Well, your sister's better than you are. Okay. It creates jealousy, strife, and other things. And that's where the mandrakes come back in. Okay? Remember, God never puts anything in the Bible that there's a reason for it. Okay? Rachel says, give me some mandrakes. Leah goes, no, my son gave me these. Well, guess what? I have a negotiation for you. Okay? And the rest is history. She has another son. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Mandrakes were used. Do you understand the bribe? Okay? He likes me more, so he hangs with me more. Okay? So, because of that, and those mandrakes look so good. Yes, that's your face is priceless. Yes. Evelyn's face is priceless, right? Right, okay? That's what I wanted you guys to see. And I'm almost done here. Okay, I see people looking at their watches. Despite the sisters' dispute, God blesses both of them. Okay? All right. So now, last but not least, Jacob is a blessing. Okay? So, in this case, now Jacob came with nothing, and I guess Laban didn't have a lot. So, those 20 years that he's there, Laban increases in his goods. Okay? Jacob, it says in the lesson that Jacob stayed with Laban because he was afraid of meeting his brother Esau based on his original deceptions of the birthright and the blessing. So he hung around with uncle father-in-law, okay, for a lot longer than he probably would have planned because he was still scared about meeting his brother. Okay. So it says his flocks increased. In fact, what I thought was kind of interesting when you read the story, he says, you haven't given me anything. So the father says, well, father-in-law says, well, what do you want? Name your wages. And he goes, nah, I'm not going to take your wages, but what I want is give me all the ugly-looking animals. I'll take them. Okay? Because remember, a offering to the Lord had to be a what of what? Pure and unblemished. Yeah, that's why I said what and what. Pure and unblemished. Okay. So now, Jacob didn't argue, revolt, or tried his own solutions. He waited on God because it specifically says he waited on God, to the voice of God. And I know I'm almost done here, but I wanted to get to this point. This has been a good discussion. The most talking I've heard of you people since I've been in church. I'm shocked and amazed. Yes. All right. Jacob tried to trick his son-in-law again, but God didn't let him. Jacob learned about genetics, okay? But didn't know what he was doing. But he learned about genetics, okay? All right. His flocks grew faster than Laban's to the point where the son, that's what I'm saying. Notice I had verse 31. He said, what shall I give thee? Jacob said, don't give me anything. I'll just feed and keep thy flock, but I'll take all the ugly-looking animals. Okay? And his flocks grew faster because God's hand was in, as they say, the pudding. Okay? All right. What was going on here, and what reasoning does Jacob use? Okay? Yes, I'm going to run over a minute, but I don't care. You stole 7 minutes from me in the beginning. All right. I want you guys to think about this one, please. Okay? What was going on here, and what reasoning does Jacob use? Anybody? Yes, Tom, he's reading it.
What helped him to see that it was time to go, too, was the attitude of Laban's sons and Laban himself.
Okay, stop right there. Okay? Yes, that's right here. Laban's son became jealous of Jacob's success. Even though Laban's flocks grew, what it said is that when Jacob saw that certain animals were reproducing faster, he took the offspring of those animals and used them to make his flocks grow faster. So the feeble ones were left with Laban, and he took the strong ones. It just happened to be that the ugly-looking animals were the ones who were the strong ones. Okay? So never judge a book by its cover. That's what we would say today. He's got a ant thing.
You know, and about Laban's sons, they were starting to think about their inheritance also. All of a sudden, their inheritance seems to be going over to Jacob.
Well, their inheritance isn't growing as fast as Jacob's.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're seeing their future. They're not
right.
being as profitable as they could be.
Wait, my sisters are getting all this?
Exactly.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. My last question is, what evidence do we see in the story of Jacob that he was growing in his character?
Up in the beginning here, it said that even though he knew he was being used big time, several times, he held everything back because he knew God was in control of everything. And the thing with the animals was God, and how we react to God and how we walk with God is how he takes care of situations like the animals.
Exactly. Okay. How we listen to God is how God takes care of the situation. We want to run ahead of God. And this is the lesson, I think. Growing in his character, he waited for God, the voice of God. Okay? So, last but not least, men whom God favored and to whom entrusted great responsibilities were sometimes overcome by temptation and committed sin, even as we at this present day strive, waver, and frequently fall into error. Their lives, along with their faults and follies, are open before us, both for encouragement and a warning. Okay? So, like I said, there was multiple, I was trying to bring multiple parts of the lesson to make you think about it. Okay? Because you have different stories here. You have Jacob and his activities. Then you have Rachel and her activities. You have Esau and his activities. Then you have Laban and his activities. You have the two sisters, and you have the brothers. Okay? There's a lot of things going on in this lesson. And so I wanted you guys all to see that. But thank you for listening to me drone on. And you all have a, oh, yes, ma'am.
Through all of this, Laban still says, I have been blessed because you were here.
Yes. Right, which we'll see about in next week's lesson. Correct. All right, so let's all bow our heads. Our Father and our God, we thank you, Lord, for this lesson and the story of Jacob, because there's a lot of things that we learn about how you still persevere with us, even though when we fall away. Help us, Lord, to be more patient, so we can hear your voice to guide us and lead us. In that name we pray, amen. All right, you all have a great...
Hey, we have one quick hand here.
5 minutes.
Quickly.
Yeah, I just got this reminds me of the famous Jewish line that man makes plans and God laughs.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, all these people were trying to manipulate their God's will through their own human actions.
Right.
And God just turns it all around and does it his way anyhow.
Anyway, right. Good point.
So we're going to take a 5-minute break while we set some things up, folks. The restrooms are in the back. The tithe box, for those that are visiting or first time, we keep it outside. We're not going to pass a plate. The tithe and offering, that's between you guys and God. You guys can figure that in the back in privacy. All righty? See you guys in 5 minutes.